Okay, so, okay. Thank you for coming here. I think it's time now, so let's start with this. Just before jumping into the main topic and talk about it, let's ask me first, who is already using, Gatsby somehow, or React, another static site, or not, or something similar to? Great. And are you the ones who are using Gatsby with Drupal, or just like with Markdown files or whatever? Okay, fine. Okay, and then start with this. So the session name, just quiet. Sorry. It's, should I talk here, or can you hear me in the back? It's fine?
If they're recording it, it'd be good to talk into that microphone.
I could be wrong, but I think that's, it's fine. I tend to move a lot, so I'm going to try to keep here. Well, again, the session is called Embracing the Modern Web Using Drupal as Headless CMS with Gatsby JS, which is like a really long title, just to keep you where it's, and I mentioned how we are using and how we are implementing Gatsby with Drupal. And before jumping into the topic, I'm Jesus Manuel Olivas. You can find me as JMOLIVAS in Twitter, GitHub, Drupal.org, and that's my blog site. And it's, blinking and jumping the screen. I'm part of the one of the co-founders of a company called WYSIWYG. We are a fully remote distributed company. At this very moment, we're like in 10 countries now. From US, most of our team is South and Latin America. Most of our team is within either Mexico, Argentina, and Costa Rica. Costa Rica is where the company started like 10 years ago. We do mostly Drupal. We used to call our agency or theme like a Drupal shop back in the day, but now we are doing way more than Drupal. Since probably 3 years ago, we decided to invest more and more into like Node.js, React, and since 2 years ago, we decided to focus a lot of our effort in working with Gatsby, that's why we are here. And before jumping into the main topic, let's go back in the day, 101 web development. How many of you remember when building a site, it was related to, write HTML, write CSS, JavaScript, JavaScript, plain vanilla JavaScript, just before the jQuery days, right? Go like that, and then, use an IDE at that particular case. In time of the existence, it was probably Dreamweaver, right? Or maybe it was like front page, and everyone, tend to headed work, front page, but now most of us use like VS Code, which is, same company. Seems like they just rebranded the product, and now we are using it. But yeah, back in the day, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and working on a site, it was, writing things on your IDE, deploy to your, to your server. In that case, FTP to your server, and SFTP for the more advanced people. It was like really simple. But then suddenly, your clients start asking for more advanced, features for your site. Happened to us, maybe happened to you. It's like, I want to be able to allow users to edit content. I want to create pages. I want to be able to log into something that provides me a graphical interface so I can enter content, and that will be helping me render pages. And at that time, we decided to invest in research for working with CMSs, and Drupal won the battle for us. Maybe for you because you're here. And the benefit of using a CMS is all-in-one platform that allows you to enter content, publish that content, but at the same time, all those benefits or all those good features are also allow you to use whatever the tool provides you. In this case, when using something like Drupal or WordPress or another monolithic CMS, you are somehow forced to use whatever they provide you to to build your site. In this case, it's like, you end up using the theme layer, the render engine they provide you for printing pages. In this case, Drupal provide, for you to use TPLs and Drupal 7. Now with Drupal 8, we have WYSIWYG and all those things. But in the end, you're still using the same platform for entering content and publishing that content. And because that a CMS like Drupal or WordPress or any of those monolithic CMSs, it's again only one tool that allows you to enter and publish content. And other than that, that's perfect. And for so long we've been using Drupal and somehow abusing Drupal and using for every single request our clients has. Most of the time it's like whenever you know a tool pretty well, you tend to use that tool probably more than you really need to. And there are some cases where you need something more linear or something else. And I will talk to you how we defined it and how we started moving in different directions while working with our client sites. Again, going back to this, while starting to working with Drupal or any other monolithic CMS, you end up get forced to somehow to keep using whatever the monolithic CMS provide you. And not only about let's say the rendering part. When you are using a monolithic CMS like Drupal, you are forced to use or to require you to run your site using a web server, using a database, or using all these different. You're forced to fulfill all the requirements you have with the monolithic systems, and that came with a price, And we'll see how that affects you when you are deploying your sites. Well, then we started to think about, can we do things a little different? And then, within Drupal world, within this monolithic world, we tend to try to decouple, the presentation layer by using a design system like Panel Lab, or there's a great theme in Drupal called Particle. But yeah, that's how we tend to do. But what if you want to go further of that? What if you really want to fully decouple your presentation layer from your backend? Then there is something called the Traditional Headless. It's using Drupal for doing the content entry, for taking care of the content modeling and doing the content entry, and using a different tool for the front end part. In this case, let's think about this. Let's keep using Drupal for doing all the data entry, and use a tool like React or Vue for taking care of the rendering part. But at this very moment, we still need to have our Drupal site alive on production. It means our Drupal site should be live somewhere in a hosting company, or we should be taking care of hosting their site ourselves, which at some point it's somehow complicated. If you have a Drupal site, if you already maintain a Drupal site or host a Drupal site, it's a little complicated. There's a lot of things to worry about. What about Drupal Get On? All the security patches, all those announcements, and you need to make sure you take care of updating your site and your web server, and making sure your database is up and running. And there's way too many pieces to take care of. So by doing this route, the traditional headless route, you're still consuming data live from the Drupal. So again, you have your Drupal site, you enable JSON API module, you expose your data, as in JSON endpoints, and you start making those calls on your site. But again, your React application or your Vue, JS application, it's pulling data directly from the site. And this is how a Drupal site looks like, either with a headless CMS or not, or not using or not the traditional headless CMS. So what's going to happen when someone visits your site? What is going to happen is you have a visitor in your site, then it's going to try to load, his browser, something, your huge and incredible site.com, and then, this is the flow that is going to happen. The visitor is loading your site in his browser, then, the browser is going to call the server where your site is hosted, and then somehow, at some point, Drupal is going to get called. Drupal has this one single file who's spin up Drupal and bootstrap Drupal and Symfony and all the magic that happens behind that we don't really have to worry about, because Drupal is great and takes care of all that for you. But then, in order to provide you a page or any particular piece of content that is coming from the CMS, what is going to happen? Drupal is going to call the database. Then, it's going to say, this route is valid, this URL exists, this page, exists in my register, and it's loading something slash whatever the node you are loading, then pull the data from the database, then call the team layer, work on do all the presentation, then the render array that we all hate and love. And then what's happened, you print in fields and values, and then you build a page, and you build the HTML page finally, right? And then you return back to the server, and then your visitor see your page. And how long this takes? More than a few seconds sometimes. Obviously you can do a lot of things to make this faster. You can add a lot of caching layers. There's you can use like Varnish and Redis, and you can do, and you can probably, instead of like hosting yourself and, living in a nightmare, you can probably get your site and put it somewhere like one of the, hosting companies that take care of doing this, like beautiful for you. But then you have to pay, probably certain amount of money, and hosting Drupal is not simple. And since it's not simple, it's not, it's a little probably expensive than hosting other platforms. But at some point, it's either you decided that you learn all the little things that you need to learn to hosting your site, which is managing server, caching, making sure that you know how to manage your web server, your database server, all the different caching tools that you are using to. Or you just decided to hosting your site and pay the money, whatever the cost is. Also, whenever you are hosting your site or running a Drupal site, you have to worry about, as I was mentioning earlier, you have to worry about security issues. What's going to happen if the new Drupal get on use? It's announced tomorrow. You need to stop whatever you are doing and going back and running, going to your server and run, maybe in your local machine, Composer update, making sure everything works and deploy to your server. You know what's going to happen when you try to run Composer update and every single Drupal site in the world, or every single developer in the world that has a Drupal site has the same need? Everyone, it's Wednesday, it's noon, it's the new security announcement, and it's done, the patch is here, so run Composer update, get the patch, patch your site, make the commit, and you push it. Everyone is trying to do the same thing. Everyone is running the same command at the same time, and then Drupal.org, sometimes it had issues because there's a lot of people trying to get, updates at the very same time. So again, so you have to worry about that. It's not only that, because I'm talking about core security issues. How about if you are using modules? Say PayPal module. Maybe the module has another piece of code that you have to take care of and worry about. What if the module has an external library, SDK? So you have to worry about keeping update core and dependencies, and the dependencies of your dependencies, and the dependencies of the dependencies of your dependencies. Start getting a little more complicated. It's not like there's something wrong with that. You just need to really take care of that. And that, takes time. Time is money. And we all know how this ends. And again, you have to worry about several things while running a Drupal site. While running every single site, right? That's a reality. You have to worry about performance. Again, you can do that, but adding multiple caching layers to your Drupal site, and that's fine. And you can add Varnish, and Redis for your users and sessions and all that. But you know what you are doing when adding all this performance, tools on top of your Drupal? What you're trying to do is to avoid calling, your app, avoiding your app calling the database, for fetching the data. So you're trying to serve in a static file, right? So instead of going back to the full, bootstrapping Drupal, querying the database, extracting the data, using the team engine for rendering values, and returning the page. So instead of doing that, you're trying to serve the page without doing all that. Can we do this from the early beginning? We'll see. Again, you have to worry about how reliable your site is. If you have too many pieces, like a Drupal, like a Apache or Nginx or MariaDB, so you have a web server, you have a database server, you have, what else? Way too many pieces to manage. Again, the more pieces you have to manage, the more pieces you have to take care. And I already mentioned security, how about, Drupal get-on and patches and all that. Again, it's not only about all the pieces you have to maintain. I mentioned already core and modules, but if you are running your Drupal site and you are running an operating system, you have to worry. If you are taking care of your own server, you also have to take care of that. So it's, again, it's either you decided to spend the time of learning and do it yourself, or just, probably something more smarter, pay, a particular company, hosting company who takes care of that, and which takes us for to the hosting piece of this, which is, you have to host your site, and it's gonna either take you time and effort or money. And now the question is, there's anything else we can use instead of going all this route? And well, there is something called static site generators. And you're probably aware of this because, during, I have seen a lot of sessions and people talking about Gatsby. There was a Gatsby training yesterday. And I think we mentioned several times Gatsby during the front-end summit yesterday as well. So again, and a static site generator is a tool that allows you to build, sites. A static site, let's think about this. Allows you to pull data from different sources, or you read data from like Markdown files and creating a static version of a site. It's kind of similar to what I was mentioning at the early beginning, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. The main difference between a static site generator and the back in the day, when we have this, HTML, JavaScript, and CSS files is by using a static site generator, you have a build process who takes care of building your site. So you can do something like having like Markdown files or CSV files or YAML files or whatever kind of files you want to, and use a build process for creating a static version of your site. And that's how most of the static site generators work, like Hugo and Jekyll, but Gatsby has a little difference with the other two tools. And the main difference with Gatsby and the other Hugo and Jekyll is Gatsby, it's not a static site generator. It's kind of like, but it's not. We can define Gatsby as a React app that allows you to create React applications. So again, the final result is not a static file, it's a React application. So but again, talking about static sites and files, it seems like we're trying to go somewhere. We're trying to go back to the flat file system because those files are simple to maintain, and you don't have to worry about security because you only have like flat files. How you're going to hack in a bunch of like HTML files? And another benefit of using a static site generator, you remember the flow that I was talking about earlier? Visitor and then server and then Drupal and then database and then the render engine. It's gone. That's gone. You don't need it anymore. But it's going to happen. What's going to happen when someone visits your site? Your visitor is going to load your beautiful site on his browser, and then what is going to happen? It's a CDN is going to take care of serving the file. The CDN is kind of like a space somewhere in the internet that can host your site. And the benefit of having your site on a CDN is if someone is visiting your site from Europe, your site is going to get copied to closer. A location where this person is visiting your site is going to serve the site from there. So whoever is visiting the site from that area is going to get the version of the site. So you don't have to worry about traveling way too much when visiting your site. And again, you are only serving static files. You're only serving HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files. So there's nothing to hack here. It's like unhackable Drupal. And we'll see how can we use Drupal and something like Gatsby for, doing this. But, remember what I told you? One of the reasons we use Drupal is because we wanted people to, adding content and manage content. But another benefit of Drupal is that we get, by default, and we didn't figure out until we are no longer using Drupal, it's, web forms. What's going to happen if we go this route? Like visitor, CDN, that's it. What's going to happen? Who's going to take care of web forms? Whoever, any of your visitors go to your site, and see this form, enter his, username or email or whatever, anything that you are asking them to enter, and hit send, what is going to happen? Well, so this is one of the challenges you have while using a static site generator. The way we resolve this is by using a CRM integration. Whenever we're using web forms, even within Drupal, the way we manage this is, having a web form, I don't know how to call it, an event or, hook event, or I don't remember the top of my head the name, but we get the payload, and when we use an external, system for storing the data into a CRM system, we use get the values that are coming from the form, and then we use an API for sending that to either Zendesk or any other CRM system. And another big probably pain that you can figure out, you can probably think you will have by using a static site generators. How about an e-commerce site? Well, you don't have to worry because there's plenty of e-commerce, headless e-commerce platforms that allow you to connect your commerce platform with your static site generator. And then also, there's things like comments and all these, things we tend to have in our blogs and our sites. And at this very moment, I think most of us, while adding comments to our sites, even with Drupal site, we use Disqus or any other platform to manage all the comments on the site instead of using Drupal. So that won't be a big deal. But another problem that we're going to have is we need a graphical interface. We need to provide the user a graphical interface to the user in order they can enter content and create, probably a content model. Because in the end, if we give them, this Gatsby site full of Markdown files, they're gonna have a hard time, trying to learning Markdown and using Beam for editing all those files, right? Because in the end, they won't be able to exit Beam at some point, and they will need to do something like editing the files locally, make the changes, commit this into the repo, send a pull request. That ain't going to happen. Maybe it's going to happen if your client is technical enough. But in reality, this ain't going to happen. So what we need to do is bring something that has a powerful graphical interface and allows you to create a content model. And there's a tool that I remember, which is good for that, and it's called Drupal. But as you can see, what we're trying to do here is decoupling the content management system from the production environment. So what we're trying to do here is keep using Drupal, what is great for, and building a site that is detached from Drupal while running on the production server. And well, you have plenty of choices here. It's not like Drupal is your only choice. And again, as I was mentioning at the early beginning, when you using a tool like Drupal and you really invest years, mastering on the platform and you're great with the tool, you tend to use the tool for fixing every single problem. So instead of solving a problem, you kind of always try to use the same tool because you're good with that. But at some point, maybe your site is small, maybe your client doesn't require a Drupal, but your choices for adding this, a separated content management or a decoupled content management from your production server could be something like either a Git Based CMS, which is a tool that allows you to make changes on those Markdown files, providing a graphical interface, or maybe a Headless CMS, which is similar to what we can have with Drupal and JSON API, turned on. Talking about Git Based CMSs, we have Netlify CMS, Cloud Canon, and Forestry. And probably the most famous ones, I think Forestry used to tend to work only with, I think as Jekyll, same thing as Cloud Canon. They are adding more features now. And Netlify, it works with whatever Markdown files are in your Git repo. And in the other side, we have Headless CMS and like Sanity and Contentful. And we can also think about Drupal as a Headless CMS. And there is something in the middle, like a hybrid CMS. And we are working on this. It's called Blaze. If you want to know, let me know. I can show you how that works. It's going to behave as both, as a Git-based CMS and as a Headless CMS. But now, okay, let's think about, I just want to get back to Drupal because I already know Drupal, my team knows Drupal, my client already, knows Drupal and it's pretty familiar with. Maybe he already invests in having like hundreds of Drupal sites and, at this very moment telling him, let's move everything to Contentful, it's not a reality, it ain't gonna happen. So let's keep using Drupal, let's take an advantage of what Drupal is great for. And use something else for doing the build part, rendering part, and use providing this final result site which you will be able to deploy somewhere else and is fully detached from the Drupal site. And for this case, we can use Gatsby or weapon of choice is Gatsby. I'm a big fan of Gatsby. Follow me on Twitter. You probably see me tweeting about Gatsby and all the magic you can have with this project. And again, Gatsby, you can see Gatsby as a static, or people tend to say, Gatsby is a static chat generator, and this is not reality. Gatsby is a React application that allows you to generate React sites. That's what it is. And by using Gatsby, we can have something like this. Let's think about, now I'm going to start talking about how we tend to implement sites. And this is how we implement our current sites. Our current site is still on Drupal, but we are migrating to Gatsby. And I think it's going to get released next week, something next week. But this is how our site looks like. Our site, most of the content is still on Drupal. Blogging and landing pages is still on Drupal. But there are some pieces of content of the site who people from HR is going to take care of. And we, at some point, while making this change, like by putting Gatsby in front of our Drupal site, we think about and we talk to them and you told them, maybe you don't want to really, you don't need to log into Drupal for manage all this data. We can probably provide you or give you access to an Airtable. An Airtable database, and you can manage content from there, and you'll be happy because you don't have to touch Drupal anymore. And they are like, yeah, and they say yes. Because HR people, they rather like spreadsheets than Drupal, forums. It's pretty understandable. Again, so we decouple the content of the site. We extract some content, you create some Airtable databases, then we have Drupal content, and we also have an external system where we manage our capabilities and skills from our theme. And we have that this Meteor application that we expose this GraphQL endpoint for fetching content within the Gatsby site while the Gatsby site builds. So I consuming data from there. So the next version of our site is gonna look like this: Drupal for the main blogging and landing pages, Airtable for whatever data HR want to manage, and then all the skills and capabilities from the current team of developers will be read from an external system API, GraphQL query. So what we are trying to get here, what we are doing here is called the content mesh. You can get content from many different places or sourcing content from different sources and building one single site. And the benefit of using something like this, and you can follow this blog post, which is on the Gatsby site, it's like 4 or 5 pieces, 4 or 5 pieces of content, and you can find out. It's really, really interesting how they explain you what the content mesh is. But as long story short, we can say we can keep using Drupal as a headless CMS for doing all the content entry, but we can provide modern tools like React for building the front end part of our site. And the final result we get is this static site, this HTML, JavaScript, React application that we can deploy to a CDN, which is fast and responsive and and secure and so simple and way less expensive to host. You can probably use Netlify, which is give you a free tier for hosting your site. I know Pantheon is working on providing support for like a CDN and JAMStack's website. So you can do that. Again, you can provide the headless CMS, you can provide modern tools for front-end people, and you can have the final result. You could be like a really fast and shiny and nice-looking feel site. And how do you want to start? We already created and contributed something we call Boina, which is a project, 2-piece project. One is the Boina Drupal starter, Gatsby starter, which is the Gatsby starter or the Gatsby project you can use for creating a Gatsby site. But this starter requires a Drupal site. So we also created this Drupal distribution. It's called Drupal Boina. It's here. You can also get this one in your local system. This is a Drupal, which is it's like fully functional Drupal who contains JSON API already enabled and all different modules that will help you to provide a better integration between Drupal and Gatsby. So again, this Drupal site, it's all that you need from a Drupal perspective. This Gatsby starter is the Gatsby piece of the puzzle that allows you to connect to the other Drupal site. And there's plenty of instructions there. If you have any questions, let me know. Okay, while using Gatsby, and the beauty of Gatsby is it's just it looks just like there's way too many things that you can map from Gatsby to, from Drupal to Gatsby, because they have a huge ecosystem of plugins. The same thing as there is a module for that within Gatsby, there is a plugin for that. There's plenty of plugins you can reuse. The community is great. And one interesting thing about Gatsby, it's the creator of Gatsby. He used to work with Drupal. He knows Drupal pretty well, so he understands a new content management system. He understands, hosting companies, because he used to work for Pantheon, so he fully understands, how a CMS should be created. So he created this project, and there's a lot of ideas you can translate, or you can, a lot of knowledge that you can reuse from Drupal to Gatsby. And again, while working with Gatsby, you might be requiring some plugins, because out of the box, it's kind of like Drupal provide you the basic site, the basic, skeleton or backbone to work with, but in the end, you can add more features, more plugins and features. And there is, in order to connect to a Drupal site, there is something called the Gatsby Source Drupal, which is a plugin or a module, we're gonna call that allow you to connect to a particular Drupal site, fetch data from that Drupal site, and then start creating a GraphQL endpoint for you. There is also Gatsby transformer remark. The same way we have Drupal, the WYSIWYG, when we can edit content and say, I want to add this entity here, and you can see what is stored on the body of your text is the entity, a tag for an entity with an ID, and whenever you render the site, you can see, the entity render there instead of the value. That process of converting text into something else, you can have that one on Gatsby. Again, there's something called transformer remark. So again, it allows you to transform Markdown to HTML, but also you can do way more things. You can transform like a YouTube URL into a YouTube embed video. You can turn a Twitter link into an embedded, tweet card. So again, similar to what you can have with Drupal, text filter and transform, you can find on Gatsby as well. There is a plugin that we created that is Gatsby Remark Drupal that allows you to, make Gatsby aware of the images on your body field. If you have a body field from Drupal and you attach an image, Gatsby won't be able to detect that it's an image that he wants to manage. So by using this plugin, you are telling to the Gatsby transformer remark, take this URL, this Drupal-friendly URL for the image and convert it into like a Gatsby-friendly URL for an image. And then now you can take advantage of the Gatsby image, Gatsby remark image functionality. And the benefit of using Gatsby image is whenever you have an image, Gatsby take care of getting like multiple version of your images, for depending of the size that you are the viewport of your browser that is visiting your site, it will serve you the proper image, either desktop or mobile or whatever, kind of use like media styles, We are talking Drupal here or Gatsby? I'm getting confused. Gatsby remark external links. Similar to what we have with Drupal, external links. You have a link, which is an external. It's going to open in a new tab. Again, there's plenty of plugins that you can take advantage of. But what's needed on your Drupal site? Let's think about, okay, now I'm sold. I want to use Gatsby. Gatsby is great and it's beautiful. And I want to use Drupal. What do I need from the Drupal side of things? Okay, JSON API, that's a module that you can enable. And Gatsby works better with Markdown than HTML, so we provide an integration with the TUI Editor. So it's a WYSIWYG for Markdown. So you can use a WYSIWYG in order to provide Markdown to Gatsby. And you can either go and enter Markdown if you know Markdown, or you can use the WYSIWYG side of things. This photo is from Badcamp last year. And you can use this WYSIWYG in order to enter, content, and that will be stored as Markdown. Then Drupal is sending Markdown to Gatsby because Gatsby play better with Markdown than HTML. And what if you want to, trigger a build from your Drupal site? There is another module. It's called build hooks. We also contributed this back. It's a module that allows you to trigger builds either when you save your content, you add new content, or whatever you want to click in your menu, deploy to Netlify or deploy to whatever, webhook, can listen to via web, if there's an API or a URL, a webhook that can listen to and trigger an action, you can do that with it. You just enter the link here, the configure, and you can start triggering builds, in any external platform. And what if you really want to, do something like this, like Gatsby? Let me tell you what Gatsby Live Preview is. Whenever you are working with a decoupled system, like Drupal for entering content and Gatsby for publishing the content, there's a little disconnection between the data entry and the publication and how the content is gonna look like. It's either I have to wait until I run the build for seeing how my site is gonna look like, or I can use the Gatsby Live Preview module. which we didn't, contribute back. It's Stirling Grub Company, contributed back. We just trying to help a few things here and there, trying to make it like a little faster because, there's a little slow, but, but the funny thing here is, there's a video, you can see, read my blog post here, and you can see the video. The funny thing is, you go to here, hit save, and Gatsby just immediately, refreshes, and you can see the changes immediately, and probably Drupal takes some few seconds for, submitting the form and rendering back the form API. So that's, we're trying to work on that, improve that. But again, as you can see here, this is my Gatsby, my Drupal site. I can, by enable this module, I can connect to an external Gatsby site or a Gatsby site that is running on my local and see all those changes live. I can enter data here, hit save. This module is gonna take care of getting all the data from this current node and send it to my Gatsby site, and you will be able to see the live preview. So again, you don't have to wait until you run the build. You can see those live, immediately. Well, before jumping into the real code that I want to show you, let me tell you two important things. What you can keep using by using this approach. Well, you can keep using Drupal for doing the data modeling because it's great, either like ECK or content types, adding fields, adding paragraphs. You can keep using that. You can keep using Drupal for the content editor capabilities, revision, moderation, scheduling, publication. You can keep using that. That's great. That's beautiful. There's some modules like Pack Auto and site settings that you can take advantage of because those play pretty well with entities. You can keep using those. But what is gone? I don't know if for good or for bad, but the render array is gone. I think it's for good, if you ask me. Unfortunately, you probably spend like 3 years learning TUI, and you won't be able to use TUI while using Gatsby. But at least maybe you are using component-driven approach and you understand how components work, and you can take advantage of that. Team layer is gone, team processing is gone, and views are gone. And that's probably a little complicated because we tend to use views for querying the data, but Gatsby provides you with something that maybe seems overwhelming at the first time you see it. It's GraphQL, which is an IDE for GraphQL you want to call. So again, from here, you can say, I want to select this GraphQL, let's say table. It's not a table, let's call it, this content type, nodes or landing pages. And you can click here, and you can start clicking in this little bar and say, I want this field, I want this other field, and it starts writing a query for you, which is pretty great. It's kind of like views. And then also you can run it from here, and you can see the results. So you can see the data. It's kind of like views, right? But you know what's beautiful here? On the very last sidebar, it also just by clicking code export, it also provides you all the code that you need to create a React component. So you can just go here. I want this little table, which is not a table. This node of data. I want these fields. You can sort, filter, you can do whatever you want to do from the graphical interface. And then, finally, you can export the code. And again, you can just copy that code and paste it into a JavaScript file, and boom, you have a component. You have a React component that you can use on your Gatsby site. And the final result is something like this. We have Drupal, we have Airtable, we have a GraphQL, we have a Gatsby, which is the React application that is pulling data from different sources. And finally, we have a React application that we can deploy to a CDN. And our final site is fully detached from Drupal while it's running on production, but it's pulling data from Drupal and other different sources. But and at this very moment, guess what? You can just turn off your Drupal site. You don't need it anymore once your site is deployed. You will need it later on for enter more content, right? But you can, if you want to, you can turn it off. Or maybe you don't want to turn off. Maybe you want to have your Drupal site behind a firewall and no one can connect to the site but only the people that is entering content and the system that is building, pulling data for building your Gatsby site. And that's pretty secure, right? And there's Drupal Gathering happening. You know what you can do? Just shut down the server and I can take care tomorrow. It's Saturday. Okay, fine. And finally, code or didn't happen, right? Let me show you some code. 5 minutes. How we build Drupal sites while working with Gatsby. We tend to use, a content type, and we use paragraph because, we provide all of the fields, all of the content modeling via paragraph, right? So we have a field which contains paragraphs, and, the user tend to enter content like this, go to the data, the form, entry, adding all those different paragraphs, like by using paragraph, you can rearrange things here and there, adding each paragraph has their own fields, we can do that. And How you can source the data? Well, by using the Gatsby source plugin. Gatsby source plugin is here. Use configure. Just tell Gatsby, this is the URL, and that's it. That's all that you need to do. Just running, npm install Gatsby source Drupal, adding this piece of content to your Gatsby config file, and you have a Gatsby site pulling data from Drupal. In this particular case, we are also pulling data from Airtable. So we have something like this, or Gatsby configuration file is pulling data from Airtable. And Airtable is kind of smart enough, so you can even relate, tables between, like content types and all that within their own Airtable definition. I highly recommend you to take a look at Airtable. It's beautiful. And remember what I told you? We have this data coming from an external source. So this is what you need to do in order to get data from an external endpoint and register your Gatsby site. Just attach to the source, to one particular action within Gatsby, which is source nodes event. You can attach to this hook or this event on the lifecycle of the Gatsby build process. And from here, you just do a get from your external URL or API, get the data, iterate the final result, and just start creating nodes. You can create your own nodes, and that will register those nodes in your GraphQL, and you will be able to reuse those for create pages. How you create pages? Well, there is an event called create pages. Basically, you run a GraphQL query, and then you start, calling the create page, function for creating all those pages for you. And the way we manage, again, remember I told you what I was mentioning? We have all those paragraphs for managing content. So we create one GraphQL fragment file for each one of our paragraphs, where we have the query. We have the fields here. There's another example. This query is pulling data from file, which has because this is Drupal relations and field data and local file, because whenever you are using media on Drupal, you are using a field which is a media file who contain another relation. So whatever, this is a GraphQL query that we're using, and there's another example right here. There's another GraphQL fragment, and just by doing this, Gatsby will find out those are fragments, and you don't have to import them in your pages, in your template. Just by registering those by doing content export and a GraphQL fragment, that's it. Gatsby knows this is a fragment, and you can use those fragments whatever you want to use this. And how use them? Just by calling like this. This is a GraphQL query. Field components is my field who contain all the different paragraphs. What I'm doing here, instead of calling each one of the fields within that paragraph, I'm just calling the fragments using the fragment name that I use right here. Paragraph JSX component is just right here. I just use using this triple dot notation and the fragment name that I just give them, and that's it. By doing this, what I'm telling GraphQL is this is gonna use this particular query, and it's gonna pull the data and using those fields. And how do I render components? Well, we have something like this. It's simple as this. We create this component resolver JavaScript function for preprocessing the paragraphs, and this function returns an array of React components. So again, its field component is an array of React components, and I just use something like this. Iterate this and render each one of the items. It means this function takes care of resolving what is coming from my GraphQL query. And this function looks like this. There is a JavaScript file who contains all of the imports that I need to. All of the React components I want to build, and just something like this. Whenever the current element that I'm iterating, the fragment that I'm calling is, it might be paragraph hero. What I'm gonna do is start extracting data from that particular, element of the array, on the current iteration, and start getting all those values and mapping to and creating my React component. As you can see here, my React component, it only receives props, key values objects. So the developer that is working on the React side of things doesn't have to worry about knowing Drupal at all. It's only React components who receive props with key values. Another example is something like this. Maybe this is another component. So again, I'm only using this component resolver function to pre-process the data coming from Drupal, and you creating my arrays of key values or mapping from key values and render my React components. And again, just return the array of components here, and my template just look like this. Components equal to resolver. This is my field who contains all the paragraphs. Just return me an array of components, and boom, that's it. And just render here, and just render all those components. Then I don't need to have any functionality here like switch case this or that Everything is here. I can share this functionality across my whole site. All of my templates and my pages can share that functionality. And I don't have to worry about mixing a lot of logic on my templates, JavaScript, my React templates. And that's it. So thank you. And I don't know if there's way too many time for questions. Feel free to ask anything during right now or just during the rest of the event. So thank you. Yes?
How do you handle taxonomy?
Okay, you can create a GraphQL query for each one of those taxonomies and using a GraphQL query for pulling all those relations, and you end up creating pages, like tags, Drupal, tag something, and all those pages can contain the related nodes to that particular taxonomy. I can show you an example. But again, it's a graph. Same thing as Drupal. Anything that you resolve by using views in Drupal, you resolve by using a GraphQL query. A component who contains a GraphQL query. Yes.
What's the biggest site you've done in Gatsby, and how long does it take to build?
Funny thing, time to market. It's incredible. We just rebuilt the whole front end of our site in 2 weeks by using Gatsby.
No, sorry. How long did it take to actually run the build?
Okay. It just depends on how many content and from which different sources are you pulling. But that can take for a few minutes to like 5, 10, 15 minutes. There are a lot of things you can do. There is a in-memory database that you can take advantage of. You can caching all of resources, so you can avoid downloading images all over again by caching those images. So basically your continuous integration system that is running your Gatsby build can probably make a copy of your from the caching directory. Just put it in a bucket somewhere like Google Cloud, and the next time you run the build, you just fetch the bucket. Have it on your current system. Run the build on top of that, and then you don't have. And Gatsby is smart enough to say, this image is already here. I don't need to go there. Okay. This image is already here. I don't need to create a different version of the image because I already created those. Okay. So it's again, there's plenty. You can enable a module that allow you to export and get a copy of the GraphQL definition, so you don't have to recalculate every single time on your build. So there are plenty of plugins or add-ons you can use for improve the speed of your build.
Okay.
But 5 to 10 minutes. 5 minutes it's kind of similar. Pretty standard. 5 to 10 minutes. 15 when there's way too many content from way too many different places, and But again, there's a lot of things you can do to improve that.
And is anyone? Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Oh, is anyone working on? I know people are working on this, but has there been any progress on only regenerating pages, only rebuilding pages that have changed that need to be
incremental builds? That's a known issue, and Gatsby people is working on that. They said they're going to release something on their own cloud platform. So at some point it's going to happen. It's still a little unclear if it will be open source, but in the end, the platform should support that in order for they can use it in their platform. So at some point, someone will figure out and can make that too. But in the end, what they are planning to say is they are planning to do making Gatsby able to run parallel builds. You can run a build and use streams for parallel. Make them run several processes for improve the building time. Mm-hmm. And they are working on the incremental build. So kind of, this is a dirty row. So this is the only thing that changed. So this is the only thing that I need to reveal. Yeah. Once that happens, that will be beautiful. And yes. Because that's probably the only thing that stop you from using Gatsby for building new sites or sites that are changing pretty often.
Yeah, totally.
Yes.
Yeah. So live preview isn't that, right? It's just showing you a preview, not a real built-out page.
Yeah,
it's not running a build to do live preview.
Live preview, it's like running Gatsby on hot reload on the cloud. But whenever you make changes from the data source, you just push those changes for on the Gatsby side that is running on hot reload on the cloud, and you can see those changes reflected. But it's Gatsby running on development mode, not on build mode. So you still need to run the build. But again, you don't have to wait until the build is run to see the changes. You can see the changes live. You're happy. Then you trigger a build and wait 5 minutes, and the site is already it's built.
Is there some other system for messing around with layouts like in Gatsby or with React or something like that? You know, like a system for people to screw around with landing pages or something like that?
No, not yet. Not that I'm aware. But there's tools like Figma and you know like Model C, all those tools that allow you to do all the create React components via graphical interface and export the final result. You can do that. Like it's separated from the Gatsby side, but you can do that somehow. And then export the final result and reuse those. Or you can create a design system where you can see all the React components, how your React components are going to look like, and then just attach those to your Gatsby side and use those on your builds.
Also paragraphs. So Gatsby can see the sequence of paragraphs.
Yeah.
So if you reorder your paragraphs on your Drupal side, then it'll register on the Gatsby build.
Cool. I'm trying to avoid that.
Yeah, I mean, I was
Trying to get him in there.
I was like that. But once I find out that was the only way to be able to really take advantage of components and the order of those components, so I decided to use paragraph in our side.
Okay.
But I was the one